Okay, so it says we're live. Okay, let me close this up. Okay, so it says we're live. Alright, rolling on video, rolling on audio, and we're good to start if you guys are good.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Support for Wrong About Everything comes from Minnesota's credit unions. Credit unions are locally based, member-owned financial cooperatives that return earnings to members through higher savings rates, lower loan rates, and reduced fees. Visit mncun.org for more information.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Wrong About Everything podcast. I am Brian McDaniel.
I am Amy Koch.
I'm Javier Murillo.
And we are Wrong About Everything. So today is not going to be something fun or funny at all. Probably all of you who are listening to this or watching us on YouTube know that on I guess overnight, Friday into Saturday, early hours on Saturday of this past weekend, a man went to 4 different elected Democrat houses, found people home at 2 of them. Senator John Hortman and his wife Yvette were shot 9 and 8 times, respectively. Yvette was protecting their daughter when she was shot. They both lived, and it's my understanding that John. Senator Hortman woke up yesterday. Speaker Melissa Hortman, and her husband Mark were not so lucky. They were both murdered in their home. And what do you say about that? These are not political figures to us. These were our friends. These are people that we dealt with and talked to on a daily basis. These are people that have been in our lives. For me, 27 years. Melissa Hortman and I knew each other as attorneys. We worked on same case, before either of us were in politics. That's what a small town Minnesota is when it comes to politics. Before she ran for anything, before I was staff, we knew each other. John Hortman was probably the senator that I worked with the most. Certainly one of the ones that I had the most personal relationship with. And that's not to say, think of me and how sad I must be, because I am sad. I am profoundly sad. I want to throw up. But I use it to illustrate just how this is not, for those of us in the world, the political world here in Minnesota, this is not a he said, she said, red versus blue, anything. This is worst case scenario has happened. It's not the first time it's happened. It's not the first time it's happened in the last couple of weeks. But these are not Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, people who are almost not real. These are not TV people. So we're going to talk about it today. Just going to get some of the things out of the way. We're in the Minnesota Credit Union Network studios here in MBC Studios here in Northeast Minneapolis. We got our producer, Gabe Noah, in the other room, making sure that you can find us on your favorite podcast app or hopefully on YouTube. We also want to thank our friends at Bradshaw and Bryant for helping us be able to do this today. Their entire team of attorneys and staff is dedicated to providing the legal advice you need, combined with the service and personal attention you deserve. If you have questions about how they can assist you with a personal injury, wrongful death, or criminal defense matter, do not hesitate to contact them. Consultations are free. Please contact them at 800-770-7008 or at minnesotapersonalinjury.com. I'm going to kick it over to you guys. I'm just going to start it as this. I was on the West Coast this weekend, so my phone started blowing up very early because of the time changes, and nothing good happens that early. And as our team, Amy and Allison and other people that we work with, started kind of like saying what information we had and what we knew pretty early on, we knew how bad this was.
I'll start, Javier, and then just jump in as we walk people through. And I think it's important that we do this. It's very painful and dark, but I really want for Minnesota folks to have a time to sort of walk through this. We've seen a lot of news coverage, but news coverage doesn't get sort of like it's bits and pieces, right? And for folks that are tuning in from around the country, I hope that you get a sense of just how deep and dark and painful this has been for a week for Minnesota, and the unbelievable loss that we've experienced in the last week. So it was around probably 5 a.m. That I got the first text from someone, and it was a tweet, like a Crime Watch tweet that covers and listens to police scanners in the metro area. And it made reference to, at the time, I think a city, I want to say Champlin, and that a representative, some sort of a legislator or representative was involved. That was the first clue. The next tweet had more information, and really the only information that we could immediately know who we were talking about, and that was where they referenced specifically a state representative in Brooklyn Park and a state senator in Champlin. And so for all of us who on the day-to-day follow this, we knew immediately that Hortman and Hoffman were involved in some terrible event. We didn't know the extent of it, but we could very quickly know from that information who was involved. Javier, when did you begin to hear about it?
My husband received a phone call at 6 a.m. around then. I think I had gone to the bathroom, and when I came out, but I was sleepy before that, and I was asleep because at 6, I remembered that I had seen your text saying Hoffman was shot.
Yes.
And I was like, wait, did I dream that? But it was because I had seen it before, but it didn't register, and I went back to sleep. And then Donna, John's boss, called, or he had a text from her, and he called her, and I could hear when she told him that Melissa Hortman had been shot and killed in her home. And at that point,
A home that all of us have been in multiple times.
I'm going to share the story. In 2018, when Melissa became speaker, we had, for years, Local 26 had been, as part of the Driver's License Coalition, tried to pass a law to extend driver's licenses to immigrants in Minnesota. Actually, I think, was that the session we hired you?
I mean, very plausible.
Or,
Yeah,
yeah, I think so. I don't remember.
because it was
I don't remember.
pre-pandemic.
Yeah. And we had this meeting, and at the end of the meeting, there were some folks. We had the meeting like at the beginning of before session had even begun, to talk about like trying to pass driver's licenses. No, it was still a Republican Senate, but we had Republican like supporters in the Senate. We knew that, and we thought this would be possible to pass. And we had this meeting where Speaker Hortman was strategizing with us. And so at the end of the meeting, after she left, there were some people who were like, "Oh, we always hear the same thing from politicians." And those of us who had been involved in the campaign for many years said, no, you don't understand. The meeting we just had is not the same meeting we have had for 20 years. This was a meeting where we were talking specifics about specific legislators. This is how you might move this person, and this is how you might move this person, like some members of our own caucus, sharing information that those people might not have loved hearing, knowing that she appreciated that she was sharing, but she was a strong ally and believer, and she cooperated and collaborated with community, that was what immediately came to mind, that Melissa Hortman, I remember the time she came on Wrong About Everything and fessed up to being a Nickelback fan.
And in her defense, Nickelback doesn't suck, and they never did.
I will accept that today. But she was at our house last fall for a fundraiser for the House Caucus. And it's one of these things where you just keep thinking we're going to wake up from a nightmare. Like that this couldn't possibly
It cannot be real.
It cannot be real.
You texted me that she and Mark had been killed.
Yeah.
So we were sort of back and forth, right? So that did not become apparent in the tweets. There was obviously no reference to that. There was references to copious blood. We knew it was bad. And then it was you that texted me to give me the news. And I just remember staring at it and I was thinking, that can't be real. That cannot be.
Yeah.
So, a little bit more about Melissa. She and I were elected in the same year. She actually came on board in the beginning of 2005, and I was elected in a special in 2005. So, and we're about the same age. We had kids that swam together. Our kids were at Great Wolf swimming, and Rachel was in the wave.
Sophie and Colin were.
Colin, yeah, they were swimmers. And so, and then the club for female caucus leaders is small. There, at the time when she was elected, she was the third in the House, third. So there's three in the House, and there's been three in the Senate, now four. Mm-hmm. And so I've always felt like a sense of just pride watching her. When you've heard a lot about, like, she was, a consequential and influential speaker, and all those things are true. But she conducted herself and managed her caucus and managed her bipartisan relationships in a really, like, brilliant, understated way. Melissa was never one to be out in a press conference saying bombastic things. She was certainly strong. She certainly made her points incredibly clear. But I can't point to a moment that felt that she wasn't that she was playing for politics or playing for a camera. She was just exactly what you want, right? She was a leader that led, and led with the values she believed in. I'm not surprised at all about your story, Javier, right? She just was going to work. She was just going to work. She had people to serve and things to stand up for. And she is a consummate leader. And I want to say a little bit about John Hortman, because the same. He is also one that he got into politics, and he's been very open about this because his daughter, Hope, has disabilities, and he very much wanted to see in politics an advocate for his daughter and children like her. And when he didn't see it, he decided to become it, and he did. And there's no question. Anyone who works at the Capitol for 5 minutes knows that Human Services Chair and or lead, Senator John Hortman, first and foremost led with advocacy for people with disabilities. And he led it vocally, and he put into place consequential legislation that will last for a very, very long time, that has changed lives, certainly, of families across the state of Minnesota. And he did it again with a smile on his face. He knew everybody. You could tell him where you were from, and he would be able to name 5 of your first cousins that he had a close personal relationship with. That is the kind of man that he was. And to think about...
He is.
Think about the terror, to think about the darkness that came into these families' lives on that awful, awful evening. And I think about Hope, who had to watch her parents gunned down, and then had the wherewithal to pick herself up, call 911, and certainly save, and we know this by the timeline, save lives with her actions, despite the pain and the heart and the just heartbreaking scenario that she was living in. I don't know. All week I've been thinking about these images, and I can't get them out of my head. I just can't stop thinking about.
And I just want to give folks a sense of what it was like in the aftermath, and like immediately after, because in that same phone call we got from John's boss, she said there was some kind of manifesto with a list in the car. And there was some confusion. They later said it was not exactly a manifesto. It was like addresses. And then I think as the FBI and stuff started investigating and finding and going through belongings, they found more information. And so then they were contacting legislators and letting folks know that they were told to shelter in place. I won't go into the details because of security, but I was helping legislator friends stay safe, which included on Saturday night leaving their homes at the recommendation of law enforcement while he was still on the loose. And while we didn't
know who he was working with, we had no idea how widespread
didn't know
this
if he was working. We still don't know if he was working alone. We still don't know if he was working alone. I have a hard time believing that he fled without help. Because the gunman, we found out later that when they visited Senator Hortman's home, one of the police officers had the foresight to think we should check on Representative Hortman, who lives just a few blocks away because of the way the districts are drawn. They live very close. And And then we learned the heartbreaking news when the U.S. Attorney press conference, I think that was on Monday, that when they arrived to Speaker Hortman's home, they witnessed him shooting Mark Hortman. They exchanged fire with him. I won't say his name. And so when they arrived, Speaker Hortman was alive, likely. He went inside at that point and then killed her. And then we are told that he went out the back door and was on foot. But he somehow got to hit the home he rents in North Minneapolis by 6 a.m. Not walking distance. And there he must have left with another car or something like that.
Yeah, he apparently had multiple cars there.
Yeah.
He texted his family, just awful, Dad went to war.
Yeah.
And we need to share that too, because this wasn't a random act. This wasn't someone that had gotten upset. Sometimes there are attacks on or legislators, or you have, and I had this. I had a stalker of sorts that had a problem with like the judicial system, and felt that he'd been treated badly in the judicial system and wanted me to do something about it, and sort of fixated on that. This was politically motivated. This was the list was all DFL legislators, state legislators, and by the way, and details where he had clearly done a lot of research on all of them. He also had the lists of some information. It's a little unclear yet about there were pro-choice
advocates. There were the former and current president of Planned Parenthood, and other leaders in the abortion rights movement.
We've heard from his sort of roommate that was a very big issue for him, and clearly. The BCA has said that they cannot state definitively yet a motive, but it's quite clear that there was political motivation here. When we started to find out about this person, it became clear that I think it was actually former Senator Paul Gazelka used the word radicalized, that this was someone that had been, as in his words, radicalized in his beliefs, and somehow, sickeningly, felt that he was justified, that he was doing some sort of good work in what he was doing. And, I just... There's been a lot of conversation this week too about that and what it means, and I just want to say to folks, when it comes to political rhetoric, and we have to say it, and we talk about this on the podcast a lot because that's really our shtick, right? That we have become so divided, we've become so dangerously close to violence or outright violence in this country over politics. And most people don't go to this extreme. But when you engage in rhetoric that when you take people that disagree with you from a political sense and make them somehow the enemy, you begin down a very dangerous path. And that is not to say that you cannot have very deeply held strong political convictions. We certainly do on this podcast. But what it does mean is that you as a leader, or you as an adult human walking through the world, have a responsibility to guard against and be respectful and be thoughtful in your debate and in your disagreement. And it is literally a matter of life and death in this case. And you can say, "Oh, that's not me. That's not me." But we have really you just go on Twitter. It's just so easy to dehumanize and bash and point enemies. And I didn't want to go into this, but this week I've been doing a lot of just like watching of Twitter, and being like sickened and sad about how even after all of this, there continues to be.
I want to speak to that.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Please do. Please just.
Because I want us to think about, people who listen to this podcast for a while know that I've, for a long time, worried about civic society falling apart in the United States, and I've said many times, the Trump years made doing this podcast, which is about people who disagreeing but not being disagreeable, and actually being friends and able to be funny with each other and go and cross lines with each other, because there's trust. That the Trump years made it more difficult to do, but also felt it made it more important to do. And for a long time, I have worried about, that the increased rhetoric, and then and during Trump's first term, it coming from the very top, that we would come to political violence, and then we saw January 6th. And I want us to think about the next assassin who's out there.
Yeah.
The next person who is convinced that they are correct. And think about the media echo chamber, that person. If the person is a right-winger like this person who is, an extremist on abortion, or and think about the lessons that they learned, that person, that future assassin, learned this weekend. In his media echo chamber, he heard that the person was a leftist. Mm-hmm. He heard that the person was a Democrat. He heard that the person was Tim Walls's friend. He heard that his wife was Tim Walls's intern. None of those things are true. And that person would have heard that the reason Melissa Hortman was assassinated is because she took a vote against health care for undocumented immigrants, and that it was payback from Democrats toward her. That is false. And it's insane to me that we have to do this, but let's break those down. In Minnesota, we have lots and lots of public commissions.
Right.
Those are they're all governor appointments. Some of them have legislative appointments, I think, as well. They are often explicitly bipartisan, or nonpartisan. The appointments. He was appointed to, I think it was a workforce.
That seems to be his thing. He was on workforce boards in Dakota County.
Yeah.
Everywhere he moved, and he moved fairly often in the state, he would get himself appointed to the workforce board. There was no expertise.
Which is not like I've served on boards like that before. Lots of people had, like our cosmetology boards. There are all kinds of things. Right. That's all it was. The fact that he's appointed by a Republican governor or Democratic governor, it's irrelevant. Democrats get appointed when Republicans are governor, and vice versa.
Right.
The thing about his wife being an intern, that was just fully made up. Understand that, and this has been misreported in some, like, people or national media saying that she voted against giving health care to undocumented folks. That's not what happened. The law had changed during the trifecta to include the ability of undocumented immigrants to pay for health insurance through MinCare, expanding the public option. That was repealed That
Right.
part was repealed this time, and most people in the caucus did not agree with its repeal, and it was the only deal that could be made to avoid a shutdown, and that sucks. And I've expressed anger about that on this show. I mean, upset about this on this show, and I have on Almanac, as I think it's bad. It's bad for budgets. It's like it's returning people to charity care. It's more expensive to do this, but that was the deal. And Melissa, who strategized with us to pass driver's license, who was a partner in community, was in communication every step of the way, trying to make that not happen. But it was the only deal, and a lesser leader would have pressured her caucus members to say, no, you're going to vote with me.
Right.
Because I need cover.
Because I need cover. Yeah, because we're 67.
Yeah.
So you need 68 to pass a vote. You needed 68.
She did not do that. She did not pressure anyone. She took the heat on her own.
Yep.
Because that's fucking leadership.
Yep.
She took the heat on her own. And like, the fact that this is being used against her, fuck you guys. Senator Hoffman was someone who in the Senate voted against the repeal. Mm-hmm. So there goes that it was that about. That's not what that was about. But back to what lesson did the next extremist learn? That next extremist saw a U.S. senator mock.
That's right.
Senator Mike Lee from Utah mocked our Melissa Hortman's murder, her assassination, making jokes on Twitter.
Memes. You put together memes.
He and his staff. So it's not just like we say, oh, the dark web, it's the worst people.
No. This is a seated U.S.
A sitting U.S. senator did that. And when the president of the United States was asked if he called the governor, he said he's not going to call the governor because pettiness was more important than recognizing that there was a political assassination in our nation. Those are the lessons this person learned. So to people listening to us in other states, I hope folks understand, and as the funeral arrangements are being planned, I hope that people across the country express solidarity, because this did not just happen to Minnesota.
Yeah.
This happened to all of us, and by all of us, I mean all of us who believe in democracy. My friends here are Republicans. I am very clear that Democrats were the people targeted here by a right-wing extremist. We can acknowledge that.
Yes.
And still be on the same side of decency.
We have to acknowledge it to be on the same side of decency.
Because
or
if
you
we
are
don't,
not, or you are not.
If we do not name things for what they are, we endanger more people.
You can tell there's a huge difference between who lives here and who doesn't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And even within Minnesota, if you look at who was trying to game this, it was nobody that knew these people. It was nobody that I work with at the Capitol. It was nobody who really is in politics.
Can I just say, you are correct. And some fucking shit posters, people like Nathan Hansen, who is engaged in Minnesota politics. And Republicans, anyone who works with that person needs to understand he still has tweets up justifying the murder.
Justifying
it.
Mask mandates. It is the most vile tweets.
I'm sorry.
There were
No,
some
no,
vile ones.
no,
That's
but
right.
but that's
Name it.
I mean that's right where I was going.
Yeah, no, right.
In that the people who dared to try to either aggrandize themselves by trying to act like armchair sleuths, people like Nathan Hansen and others who I won't give airtime to. There is a rot
Yeah.
inside of them that disgusts me. I mean, they come after us as much as anybody, but that's not the point. It's that, for the most part, Mike Lee and other people who have real positions of authority, that's worse. But for these groupies and hangers-on who are so upset, including the gunmen, so upset that they aren't important, that they're not part of the process, that they will insert themselves into the process. Once upon a time, before, effing Twitter and the other things, these would have just been the assholes at the bar that you didn't want to talk to. The guy at the work you didn't want to have lunch with because he was talking stupid. The internet weaponizes these people and gives them a community where they get attention for saying these stupid things, these dangerous things. And and the whataboutism, or what do you call it?
Both sides.
Both sides.
Both sidesism. Yeah. We want to have a competition. We can say this happened 2 weeks ago, this happened this week. What's wrong with you? What is wrong with you that you want to say one of these things is more acceptable than another? I mean, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen to you. It's not going to happen to you because who cares who you are and what you're doing? You're in your mom's basement being a jagoff. I'm proud's the wrong word because there shouldn't be anyone who's happy about any part of any of this. But the elected officials who have stood up, on the Democrat side, Senators Smith and Klobuchar. On the Republican side, Harry Niska and Nolan West and others who have stood up to these national clowns trying to attach it to walls. Obviously, you've never been on one of these commissions, so you don't know how they work. I know lots of people that were on commissions with this guy. I represent the counties. He's on tons of county stuff. I know a friend of mine was on that state board with him. And yes, they didn't really know the guy. And the person I know who was on the board with them didn't think he was a Republican. I mean, it doesn't matter. It does not fucking matter. But you don't know how it works. You don't know these people. You don't know how the world really works. You have just a little smidge of an entrance into the real world, and this is how you choose to conduct yourself Nathan Hansen's an attorney.
Yeah, he should be reported to the ethics.
Somebody should see what they can do about that.
Yeah, he should be reported to the ethics committee of the bar for justifying murder in public.
So the humanity that Minnesotans, elected officials and staff and all of that have shown in this moment gives me hope a little bit. The disgusting behavior of these groupies and hangers-on and clowns on the federal level, Dinesh D'Souza and all these people who get rich off of whipping these people up. I mean, I'm happy that Minnesota has pushed back. And I'm disgusted that in any way, I mean, who's Tim Walz to you? Are you afraid of Tim Walz becoming president? Probably don't need to, but it's worth it. That to you, huh? Just to not even be able to spell his freaking name right.
Yeah.
It's not Waltz. There's no T in it. You don't pronounce it with a T. You don't spell it with a T. He was on TV a fair amount. You probably could have picked that up somewhere, but you're embarrassing yourself you're embarrassing your family, and ultimately, you are a rotted husk of a person, and go to hell.
Yeah.
Right.
That's, I was so proud of Senator Smith for calling him out, pulling Mike Lee out. And then her staff released the email that her deputy chief of staff for communications wrote to the staff, the chief of staff in Mike Lee's office, and they released it because here's the thing: people are doing this for clicks. So you know what? You should be shamed in public because you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yep.
I can't imagine how this plays in Utah because like I am not Mormon. Every Mormon I've ever met is so kind, so nice.
Right.
Almost so nice that you're like,
Yeah.
Like-
Right. What are you up to?
Mitt, please.
yes, and I can't imagine that making light of murder plays well amongst Mormons. I would guess people are embarrassed. I would hope they are. But I was just so grateful.
It wasn't making a point even. It was just
It was like a
mocking.
joke. It was like a mock.
trying to be funny.
It was a mock.
about it. Didn't even do it well.
No, it's disgusting. How do you look in the mirror? How does he look in the mirror? And by the way, it took a couple days for him to come to his senses and take it down.
Yep.
It sat up for days.
Yep.
While we were learning the horrible, horrible, bloody details.
Yep.
And his tweet sat there.
Yep.
And I just say to you,
He was
Mike Lee.
It took him being publicly shamed by Tina Smith and
that's
her
right.
staff.
That's right.
And he still didn't take it down.
Nope.
He took it down when his friend Amy Klobuchar talked to him about it because they worked together on a bill about big tech. So apparently that's what it takes is someone you're friends with to say, "Hey, you were a jackass," and then that finally.
That's what it. If that's what it took, I mean, it's even just sicker for him.
It's
Like, what
grosser.
is you just?
It's grosser. It's just so. Yeah.
And then somebody broke into her house.
Has that been made public?
Yes.
Yes,
It's all. Yeah. It's very public. Somebody
did they-
broke
what
into
did
the.
they say about it?
They
What?
broke into the Hortman house. Doesn't look like anything was stolen. We don't know who it is, so we don't know if it was somebody looking for copper wire or somebody just looking to be a provocative asshole. It's a good way to get yourself shot, you jackass. But that's how stupid and disrespectful and disgusting people are. Either that you were going to try to steal from these recently murdered people, or that you were just kind of like trying to see if you could do it, thrill seeking, or what? I mean, are you kidding? And we shouldn't speculate. I mean, speculation's poor. But I think I agree with you. I don't think that there is a way for him to get from Brooklyn Park or Center. I can't remember which one. Brooklyn Park. From Brooklyn Park to North Minneapolis to Sibley County in southern Minnesota by himself.
By the way, also, and we know this now. Apparently, his route was very odd and circuitous and long for the time. We know that he shot the Hoffmans, if I'm correct about this timeline, around 2:30. We then know that he went to a Maple Grove representative's home and found no one home.
And that
So
has
Champlin to Maple Grove,
that's
that
been
was
confirmed to
that's
be
been
Representative
confirmed.
Kristen Bonner. She has commented on it.
Then drove to New Hope outside of a state senator's home, where, by the way, at that point, law enforcement had been deployed and a police officer arrived and saw him sitting out front. And remember, he was dressed in gear and in a vehicle meant to look like a police car. And actually tried to get his attention. He didn't answer. I believe she called for backup, is my understanding. And by the time backup arrived, he had left. At which point, he then went to Brooklyn Park. So he traveled a lot, and where he attacked the Hortmans and law enforcement arrived. But
You know, this thing, like I know, Monday morning quarterbacking, but I can't believe her home wasn't protected last night. When that there wasn't a police officer out there. And I do want to say, I hope that there are, yes, that there was a massive manhunt, and thank God he was found. And there are also some lessons here. He went to North Minneapolis, the neighborhood. He was very close to our friend Karen's house. North Minneapolis received not once a shelter-in-place order. There were tanks. There were all kinds of military vehicles in their streets, and people are texting each other, "What's going on? What's going on? What's going on?" They searched his home. They never had a shelter in place. There was a shelter in place for Brooklyn Park immediately when they were searching the surrounding area. There was a shelter in place in Sibley later.
Right, near Green Isle, where he was discovered. There was a shelter in place. Yes,
which makes sense.
Of course.
How could you not do that in North Minneapolis? And I just also want to say, every legislator outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul, thank God, thankfully, had their local police departments immediately deployed to look out for them. I think that was not just Democrats, too. I think Republicans.
I know all my Republican friends as well.
You know where most legislators did not have? In Minneapolis and St. Paul, in both cities. Not all. There were there were a few legislators who did have police protection because of because they were seen to be more at risk. But even after knowing that the guy was going after Democrats,
right,
and was focused on the issue of abortion, there were urban Democrats
that did not have protection.
I know them personally, so don't come at me. I know what I'm talking about. Who asked for and did not receive police protection. Can you imagine what it's like to be a legislator? To have children and a family, and this is happening, and all you're told is to shelter in place? And you hear every one of your colleagues and all around Minnesota has police protection, but somehow Minneapolis and St. Paul could not figure that out? And I don't know what the details are. I know that there was disagreement about whether it should be the state patrol or you would think they would have been fighting each other over having the ability to protect people.
We're going to have lots of unfortunate time to figure out what were the motivations, what could have happened, what could have not happened, all of that. We tape on Wednesday. Tonight at the Capitol, there's a candlelight vigil for Melissa and Mark Hortman. People are requested to bring their own candles and to not bring signs. What time does that start out here? 8 p.m.? 8 p.m. I don't have details to release, but I know that the arrangements for her funeral and everything that they're going to, I know some things and nothing I'm authorized to release, but the other things that are going to accompany that are coming up, and everyone grieves their own way. Some people want the comfort of community. Some people would rather be in a cocoon. There's no right way to do it. The only wrong way to do it is to make it about you. So please don't. What we're seeing online has been very beautiful and respectful as far as people posting memories and thoughts and pictures of Melissa and Mark Hortman. I encourage that to continue. And for everyone to realize this is not okay. This is not just one of those things. This is not something that Melissa and Mark Hortman and their family signed up for or did anything to deserve, no matter what your politics are. And if you're doing the mental gymnastics to try to prove one of those things, you just need to sit this one out and talk to your your family, your priest, your counselor, and figure out why are you this way.
You know, as we get older, you view historical time differently. And I remember hearing from people who were young in the 60s, that summer when Bobby Kennedy was assassinated and Martin Luther King, and there was this feeling of just chaos and uncertainty about what was going to happen. I took yesterday and Monday and Tuesday off, and I tried to go back to work today. I had a meeting of my team, and we work with organizations across the country, and it was in talking to them that I realized that I just came to that thought, that I'm not saying how that I'm angry that the world is going on, but looking at the national news reporting anything but this feels so jarring. But more importantly, this is not something that happened to Minnesota. This happened to the country. This is a really severe warning to the country, because as I was talking to that next assassin, we don't know where that person is, but he learned lots of positive lessons for himself this weekend, unfortunately, because some people in positions of power, whether it's media power or political power, decided that this was just another game, that this was just another moment to capitalize on. And I fear for us all. And so I hope people across the country stand up to honor the memory of Melissa and Mark Hortman. Melissa was a public servant. You don't get rich being a state representative. Mark Hortman, the thing I remember about him was when we were trying to
pass Sunday sales.
And Melissa was being, a careful strategist and circumspect about her position on it, because, sometimes stating your position isn't the best way to get the thing done, and all this. And we didn't know it was going to go. And Mark reached out to me over Twitter. It just made it very clear that his position was not his wife's position. He was strongly for Sunday sales of alcohol.
And Nickelback really just wasn't his taste.
Been a couple areas.
But they, maybe we should close this segment by reading some of
Sophie and Colin.
Yeah.
So as part, maybe should we do thanks? Because kind of we can tag in.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. So, because I didn't plan any. We do spanks and thanks for folks that are new listeners. We do spanks and thanks where you call out one bad thing for the week and one good. And I didn't want to call out any. I didn't want to do any spanks this week because I feel like this awful individual dumped so much blackness and pain into this week that I only want to acknowledge the things that I saw that gave me light, because I found myself a few times this week getting sort of lost in the ugliness of the news and of Twitter. And so I'm going to do the things I like and the thanks. So I do want to thank, I know a lot of my legislator friends that did receive very quick and very careful protection by local law enforcement.
Yeah.
Brad Tabke, Representative Tabke, had a real timeline on Facebook about his local law enforcement and the great protection and security that they gave his family. I wish that for all our legislators, but it was very heartening to see, and I want to say thanks to them. I do want to thank Minnesota lawmakers and leaders, because I think that while this isn't just for Minnesota, please, people, look at what Minnesota lawmakers and leaders did, because they led and they did it in the right way. a few notable, of course, Senator Tina Smith, who had the power and the ability to stand up to Senator Lee, and she did. Very, very, very much thankful. I spoke briefly to Lieutenant Governor Flanagan yesterday, and she, for me, centered the families because she talked about her beautiful daughter and her fear. And I think it's easy to think about the legislators here, but all of them were also protecting not just themselves, but their families. Pat Garofalo had a beautiful tribute to his friend Melissa Hortman. Mary Franzen was on Twitter fighting back and beating down the ugly trolls. And so I think that either you shut up or you did many good things, and I want people to notice that, and I want to thank you. This one's gonna be. I want to thank Gilbert, the Hortman family dog, who died certainly protecting his family. And so Gilbert, of course, apparently was just too damn happy to be a helper dog, and so the Hortmans adopted him. Was also shot and killed by this animal. But Gilbert will go on and he'll inspire many people to adopt a dog, and he'll give families some of their best friends, and he will give homes to many, many other good boys and girls. But truly want to thank Gilbert. And I want you all to chime in. I want to thank the children, Sophie and Colin Hortman, because they put out a statement that they wouldn't have had to put out a statement. No one was expecting anything. But they put out such a beautiful and peace-filled statement. It's very simple, where they talked about their parents and then they said that for their parents, the things that you can do, and they gave a list about visiting a park and planting a tree and petting a dog, baking a cake. Apparently, it was Mark that liked cake and Melissa liked bread. The other way around. The other way around. To tell the cheesy dad joke, to learn something new, and to stand up for what you believe in. And I don't know that all of us would have had the strength or the ability to articulate so beautifully. And I have to think that it has everything to do with the parents that raised them. And so I want to thank them as well. Personal note, I want to thank, on Saturday when I found this out, I was actually in Iowa at a golf tournament with my boyfriend Clint. His son was playing, and it was a very surreal and difficult day. And Clint couldn't have been better. He was strong, and he was kind, and he was gentle. And he let me watch all the news that I could watch, and when I didn't want to watch news anymore, he would put on something so I could be distracted. And so I want to thank you. I love you. There you go. Thank you.
We'll give Javier the last word. I'm just going to say one. I had a couple of thanks. I'm just going to use one, though. So I was on the West Coast. I was on the Oregon-Washington border. I was officiating a wedding of a coworker of Amy and myself. And while you had horrible weather here in Minnesota, we had beautiful weather in a beautiful location with a beautiful couple that looked beautiful. Every wedding has drama. There was no drama in this wedding. I was very honored to be able to play a part in it. I've been told I did very well, which I'm sure most of you would gather that I would.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to find good things where they exist. They got married on Friday, which was a blessing. So their wedding did not have this amongst it. And there are new beginnings.
Saturday was so surreal I had planned to go to the No Kings rally. Then this happened, and I decided not to go because I was frankly scared and especially after they found those No Kings flyers in the dude's car and didn't know what that meant. It seems he was leaving them at his victims' homes to deflect. But I didn't go there, and I was trying to avoid watching the Trump birthday military parade, which was it would be comedy if it weren't so insane. And I kept thinking about my goddaughter, Siobhan. She's Peggy's daughter, Peggy Flanagan, our lieutenant governor. She's growing into such an incredible little human. She's strong, she's assertive, she's funny, she's a beautiful singing voice. And she was woken up Saturday morning by police looking in her window because they didn't know if they were approaching a crime scene. And given what she learned later, what it was all about, I haven't been able to see her yet. We'll see her tonight. But I can't, that will, we all have trauma reels in our brains that we experience from our life and being children. And there's no way that won't be in her trauma reel. She's an incredible young woman. I think of her and all my friends who have children, and I just hope you all are successful at building a better world than what we've left you. And that's my thank for the children, and in particular my beautiful, wonderful goddaughter, Siobhan.
We're not going to end on our normal way. We're just going to thank you for listening and hope that everyone takes something away from this. And we will talk to you and see you next week on the Wrong About Everything podcast.
Thank you. Take us away, Gabe.